Good morning, fifth graders. I am so excited that you are back today. It is Tuesday, and we have several things we're going to be doing today, so let's go ahead and get started on that. Let's do our word of the day, so you need to make sure and get out your language arts and reading interactive notebook. If you'll get that out, we're going to start on our next week's worth of Word Nerd Words. And I believe this is week 12. It's either 11 or 12. So let's go ahead and look at our first word for this week. And the word is vast. And that is a vast open space in that picture. So your word today is vast. So if you will look that up in a dictionary or on your phone, you can write that down. Make sure you put the part of speech, you put the definition, use it in a sentence, and then the synonyms and antonyms for that. Okay, so that is our word for today. And then we are going to be looking at our story for today, which is about the Hindenburg. So you should have completed all your Satchel Paige things last week. So if you haven't done that, you need to go ahead and do that and get those things done. They're not going to be due until we come back to school. Make sure and be keeping all your things in your purple pocket so that you don't lose them. So we are going to be working on the Hindenburg this week. So please get out your orange book and find the story, the Hindenburg. Use your table of contents to find it. I'm going to give you just a second to do that while I'm doing something here. Okay, so get your orange book out. Turn to the Hindenburg, and we're going to be looking at the vocabulary words. They're on page 702, so if you aren't there yet, 702. Okay, our first word for today is cruised, and the way to use cruised is like, I cruised down the highway in my convertible. It means to drive and to go at a certain pace, you cruise. Word number 2 in your words to know on page 702 is hydrogen, and that is a type of gas. I'm sure you've talked about that in science class. It is a type of gas. It can be explosive. All right, the next one is explosion. Word number 3 is explosion, and that obviously means when something blows up or catches fire, okay? Then your fourth word is drenching, and that is where you completely cover something with water. You soak it through. The next word is era, which kind of goes with our word generation, and that is another word for generations. It's a synonym, and era means a specific time period. So that's going to be going with our story today, the Hindenburg. And then the last word is criticizing, and to criticize someone means to tell them something that they're doing incorrectly. So to criticize, you might criticize, like in our story, they're going to talk about how these blimps, like the Hindenburg, we would criticize them because of what happened. But back then, before we knew that they were dangerous, you know, people thought they were the best thing ever. So you can criticize people, you can criticize items. Sometimes it is critical information can be good because it can help you improve. But sometimes when people criticize and bring it across in a negative way, it can feel like negative language towards you or towards whatever you're working on. So it can kind of be one of those words that works both ways. Okay, so I'm going to flip this around. Here we are. You should be on this page right here. 704 has a picture of the Hindenburg. And this is expository nonfiction. It explains what certain things are and how and why they came to be. So our genre is expository nonfiction, which means this is a true story, and it's going to explain exactly what happened. And then this is our title page by Patrick O'Brien. And it said, could a tiny spark lead to a gigantic explosion? Okay. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to read the first couple of pages like we did last time, and then you can follow along, and then you will finish the story on your own. Okay, so I'm going to put you up here. Sorry, every time I do that, I'm always worried that it's going to fall out of there. Oh, yeah, he didn't fall. Okay, so we are right here. This is what your page should look like. We're on page 706. And I may pronounce some of these words wrong. I hope not, but it might happen. Okay, it says in Germany in 1900. The first dirigible was successfully flown. This mammoth airship consisted of several giant gas-filled balloons inside a hard, hollow structure that was moved along by motors and steered by fins. In 1931, the most advanced dirigible yet, the Graf Zeppelin, began flying from Germany across the Atlantic and back, carrying 20 passengers in dreamy luxury. Meanwhile, its designer, Hugo Eckener, had even grander plans in his mind. So what had happened in the 1900s, they created blimps. If you've ever seen the Goodyear blimp, like on at football games or baseball games, sometimes they'll show the Goodyear blimp. That is a blimp. Well, back before air flight is the way it is today, people flew in these gigantic blimps. They were huge, over 800 feet long, okay? That's like 8 blue whales. If you don't know how big a blue whale is, you need to look that up. 800 feet, that's a big old blimp. Now, it didn't carry a lot of people because most of the structure on the top was big, and then the compartment on the bottom was where the people were at. But for its time period, it was the largest airship ever. And even today, it was bigger than a 747. So that's pretty big. Okay. Page 707. While the Graf Zeppelin was busy with these transatlantic flights, Eckener planned another airship that soon would be taking shape at the Zeppelin Company in Germany. A bigger and better ship, the perfect ship, the Hindenburg. The new Zeppelin was to be so big that a giant new hangar had to be made to house it. So these other blimps that they started with were not as big, and then he got an idea in Germany, that's where they started from, that he was going to build the biggest one ever. And it was going to be bigger and better, kind of like the Titanic. Okay, turn the page, 708. I'll read 708 and 709. You can see the little graph up there at the top, the little map of what the Hindenburg looked like. The gas cells in the Hindenburg were filled with hydrogen. Hydrogen can be extremely dangerous because it will explode if it comes in contact with a spark or a flame. All the German Zeppelins ever made had been filled with hydrogen, but the Zeppelin workers were very careful and they had an excellent safety record. In the early days, there had been a few accidents in which crew members were killed, but no paying passenger had ever been hurt or killed in a German Zeppelin accident. The designers of the Hindenburg included all the latest safety measures in their new Zeppelin. An American naval officer examined the ship and reported, "I consider all possibilities of danger in the new Zeppelin eliminated." So he's saying he didn't see anything that would cause anything to happen, that it should be perfectly fine. In the 1930s, the Nazis came to power in Germany. Eckener did not like their brutal ways. He resisted their control whenever he could, and he made speeches criticizing the Nazi Party. Eckener thought that transatlantic travel could help create better understanding between different countries. He said that he wanted to be of service to mankind in the development of air travel. But the Nazis wanted Zeppelins only to glorify Germany and to symbol Nazi power. So if you don't know about the Nazi Party, that was a group of people in Germany that was led by Adolf Hitler. And they ended up having a horrible thing called the Holocaust with the Jewish people and other peoples. And when he came into power, he started taking over different things to promote the Nazi Party and the Nazis. And we look upon that group of people in a very negative light today, as we should. And to know that he was trying to take over these Zeppelins. This Hugo Eckener did not create these for him to use as a wartime power piece. He wanted people to be able to travel across the Atlantic Ocean and to go back and forth from the United States to Europe. And that was his dream, and that's what he wanted to happen. The Nazis did not like Eckener, so they made him a non-person. This meant that his name could not be mentioned in newspapers, and no one was allowed to print a picture of him. Eckener was forced to put the Nazi symbol, the swastika, on the Hindenburg. His dream airship would have to fly the Atlantic with the hated swastika displayed on the tail fins. And you can see that in the picture. And so Echner, the Nazis called him a non-person. Can you imagine somebody telling you you're a non-person because you don't believe the same way they do? He did not like their brutal ways, and so he was not a fan of them at all. But back in those times when they were kind of held captive, he had to do what they said. And so he built his wonderful blimp, and then they painted that on there, and he was very disappointed and saddened by that because he did not want to promote any of those things at all. Okay, I guess I'll read one more page on 710. So turn the page. The Hindenburg made its first flight to America in May of 1936. The takeoff was so smooth that passengers did not even know the ship was airborne unless they were looking out the windows. The ride was perfectly steady and quiet as the ship cruised at 80 miles per hour over the Atlantic Ocean. Only the rich could afford to travel by airship. The tickets were $400, about the price of a small car in those days. The passengers had their own rooms with beds and sinks, and there was even a shower on board. The kitchen was well stocked with the finest foods. On Atlantic crossings, the chefs used 440 pounds of meat and poultry, 800 eggs, and 220 pounds of butter. When the airship arrived in America, cruising low over New York City, thousands of people filled the rooftops, windowsills, and streets, cheering wildly as the huge Zeppelin floated overhead. Echner later tried to explain the strange appeal of his giant soaring ships. A Zeppelin, he said, was like a fabulous silvery fish floating quietly in the ocean of air. It seemed to be coming from another world and to be returning there like a dream. The Hindenburg made 9 more round-trip flights to the United States in 1936. The landing spot was in Lakehurst, New Jersey, about an hour south of New York City. During the winter of that year, the Hindenburg made 7 trips down to Rio de Janeiro. The first flying season was a huge success, and 18 trips to the United States were scheduled for the next year. At the same time, the Zeppelin Company's other ship, the Graf Zeppelin, was still keeping a schedule of regular flights from Germany to Rio de Janeiro. So they had 2 giant airships, and one was the Hindenburg and one was the Graf Zeppelin. And the Zeppelin was the name of the company that actually made these blimps. That's why they keep saying the Zeppelins, and that's all the blimps at that time. They just called them Zeppelins, but they had specific names. Now, they said that it cost about $400 to buy a ticket back then to fly on one of these Zeppelin blimps, and that would be close to $8,000 today. So you can compare that with buying a ticket for $8,000. That's about in what it would be in today's money. That's a lot of money. I could not fly on the Zeppelin, I can tell you that. Okay, so let's finish that last paragraph, and then I will let you finish the story on your own. Because of the success of the Hindenburg, Hugo Echner was able to make an agreement with an American company. The Americans would build 2 big airships, and the Zeppelin Company in Germany would build 2 more. There would be 4 new airships flying the Atlantic. Echner's dream of regular transatlantic travel was beginning to come true. So his vision of seeing all these airships being able to travel back and forth and bring people back and forth was coming true, because now an American company was also going to build 2 airships, and Germany was going to build 2 more. Okay, so you're going to need to finish that story today on your own. It is actually a pretty interesting story of what happens to the Zeppelin, so you need to pay attention to that. And this week's skill, last week we did sequential order. This week's skill is going to be cause and effect, and we've talked about that before. So you need to get out your Hindenburg packet, and we're going to turn to page 1. That's going to be your assignment for today. After you finish reading the rest of the Hindenburg, you're going to get on your information and find 5 interesting facts, which I already have mine done. And so I will read you one of mine. Let's see. Which one do I want to read? I'm going to read this. So the blimps also were mail carriers. That's what their job was. Kind of like we transport mail in trucks. We still use airplanes, trains, all kinds of things. Well, the blimps also carried mail, transatlantic mail. So I better not read you that one because I want you to read the rest of the story. I'm going to use Okay. The Hindenburg was 3 times longer than a Boeing 747. It was the largest aircraft ever to fly. Okay, that's mine for today. Okay, so anyway, that's what you need to do. Finish your story. Do your 5 interesting facts about the Hindenburg, and then you need to do an illustration of whichever one you think is the most important to you, the one you like the best. I didn't draw mine on here yet because I just do examples for you. Okay, so that's that. So your word nerd word, which is vast, and then your Hindenburg story and that. Okay, now let's move to our Tlingit Indians. So we're going to be making a totem pole today because we read about the Tlingit Indians. So this is what it's going to look like. This is in your purple folder. It's not cut apart. You're going to cut it apart and then just put a little glue. And then there should be lines to write on. A little glue. A little glue. Boom. So it makes a little flat book like that. And I colored mine. And then what you're going to do is each one of these characters, which this is a raven, a fox, a butterfly, and a whale. These all represent certain characteristics in people. And let me put these up here. So, well, I'm going to take you down because, okay, there we go. Okay, look. So, the fox stands for shy, clever, and fast. The butterfly is delicate, colorful, and beautiful. The raven is smart, free-spirited, and independent. That means just likes to go with the wind. And independent means likes to do things on their own. The whale is strong, friendly, and a good swimmer. So if you need to pause that when you do this assignment, I'm going to put that just like that. I will probably put a picture of that on Google Classroom for you. So what you're going to do is each one of these characters, so when you get to the raven, you're going to think about someone you know that is like the raven, which is smart, free-spirited, and independent. So you're going to write who you think is like the raven underneath the raven, and then write why you think they're like the raven, according to those character traits that are what the Tlingit Indians use to represent these characters. So it could be someone in your family, one of your friends, someone you know, relative, whatever you want to use, okay? So each one of these, you're going to have someone that's like the raven, someone that's like the fox, someone that's like the butterfly, and someone that's like the whale, according to these characteristics that are on this paper. And like I said, I will put that on Google Classroom.